Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday morning, and it is hot. Memphis, the Mid-South, Cross County, Arkansas. You look on the weather forecast. Every day for the next 8-9 days, 98 to 100 plus. Drink a lot of water. Stay in the shade. Pace yourself. It's going to be great. And listen to this show. Next 2 hours, we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to start off with Dudley Dawson, hogville.net up in Springdale on the northwest corner of Arkansas, where it's probably a little bit cooler. At least there's some cold streams and rivers around there. Right now, I'm just dreaming of laying in the spring river, drinking a Ham's beer while I'm kayaking and catching rainbow trout. Gary Harris checks in the second segment, Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9 WVUA TV 23, and Tider Insider TV with our friend Rodney Orr, Tuesday nights at 6:30 on YouTube. Hour number 2, the AD Angle. This is going to be really interesting. Matt Dean at Rhodes, John Hartwell at ULM, and John was texting me last night, Dudley, from Wrigley Field. He said, they don't serve hams here anymore. He said, it's old style. I said, that's right. But they used to be, I believe hams was the house beer. But 6 days a week, man, 25 shows a month at least, 50 hours of content or more. You want to get your message out to a large and growing audience, 72% men, 28% women. Sorry, I can't come up with any other groups, but it's just men and women in my world. But they are great listeners, great consumers. They love sports, college sports, even love pro sports, and they love hunting and fishing, God and country. They are our kind of people. Again, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Let's go, man. Let's bring in the big guy out of the bullpen. Last week, we were SEC Media Days. That was a lot of fun. More than anything, Dudley, it was informative. And there are a lot of narratives coming out. Arkansas, the preseason picks, I'm just going to tell you what, you've been to Media Days. Mm-hmm. Guys, when they get those picks, I think a lot of them, it's like when you get a customer survey and it's got 10 questions, on a scale of 1 to 5, and they keep asking, you're just giving them straight 5s or straight 0s. I don't know how accurate. Look how wrong they are, but they damn sure aren't giving Arkansas, a lot of attention with the backfield punch that they have. There's a narrative, Brian Kelly, Alabama, A&M. A&M is what people used to say about what could Florida be. What was your takeaway from Media Days?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, and you mentioned the media voting, sometimes that just gets nuts. I mean, Vanderbilt had 8 votes for winning the entire thing. Seems a little laughable to me. But Arkansas, feels good about itself. That's the most important thing. Whether they were picked to finish 4th or 5th, or I don't know, some of them had them in their 3rd. That I think they feel good about the 40 different newcomers they have that are now in this program, and that will get practice going here in for too long, maybe a week or so.
Yeah, about a week. Dudley, I'm going to ask you, when you look at a head coach, whether it was Chip Kelly at Oregon and then he went to the NFL, you can't run that offense in the NFL. If you can't run between the tackles, no go. Goes to UCLA, he's getting them going. It took him longer than he probably thought it would. But you got a coach like Nick Saban. He's known as a defensive guy. But Sam Pittman, he's known as an offensive line coach. But he spends time, I'm sure, with the offensive line, maybe more than he does other positions. But how big a deal is that when you make a guy that's that good of a position coach a head coach? What do you give up when you do that? And that's on any staff.
Well, I think Coach Cody Kennedy does a really good job with the offensive line here. But, obviously Coach Pittman's recognized as one of the gurus and legendary offensive line coaches. He's recruited and sent so many people to the NFL in his different stops. And I think that will continue this year with Bo Limmer. Probably moving and Brady Latham, probably moving on, to the pros next year. It's as you mentioned, it's a quandary, I guess. You want to have the best offensive line coach you can. You also want to have the best head coach you can, and sometimes, surprisingly, that's not it's not the same thing, or sometimes it is. It's just trying to figure things out. He has made it clear that he visits all groups, that goes to all the meetings as you would expect from a head coach, but he tries to let his guys do what he hired them to do, and that's coach their position. And he feels like he's got a really good staff now. And so, but I'm sure, and I've seen him, he'll make sidle over there and drop a bit of knowledge.
Yeah. Let's look at this offense, defense, special teams for Arkansas. You got 9 starters coming back, but you alluded to it a couple of minutes ago about the 41 newcomers, high school, the portal, and everything. You got 85 guys on scholarship. That's almost half is new. We go back, in high school, that was one of the challenges a head coach always had, was replacing so many people, because you typically played a lot more seniors than you did anything else. But this is the new norm in college football. I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, certainly, as you said, it's the norm now. So you either get with the program or not. And certainly this NCAA rule that allowed the programs to get back up to 85 by going over the usual limit of 25, I think is a good 1-year deal. I don't know that you are to have it continuously as a thing, or the turnover will maybe overwhelm programs. But I do think that as we go back to COVID years and super seniors and all that, and kids staying around for an extra year, you had a situation where the roster was in flux, and now the NCAA allowed this. There are some things that the NCAA does I'm not that big on, but I think this is one of the really good things.
Yeah. And you talk about the number of guys that are 6-year guys, and there's a lot of 7-year guys. We were talking Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline yesterday. Ole Miss has a guy that's 26 years old on the team. And I was in college for a long time, but not that long. But that's okay. When think back to World War II, I once went to the Orpheum Theater downtown Memphis, and Burt Reynolds was up on stage talking about his life in the movies. That was one of the coolest things I ever went to. My dad and I went, and he never goes to the movies because he can't stay awake. He's a certified narcoleptic. But it was unbelievable him talking about, Florida State brought football in 1948, right after World War II. He talked about playing against the the Southeastern Conference schools. And you had all these guys that were at 24 and 25, 26 that had been, paratroopers in the 82nd Airborne, 101st Screaming Eagles. They were Rangers. They were tough guys. West Point, think about all that. We've been here before. Why is it, Dudley, and you're a great literary mind, why do we always think this is the first time we've ever encountered adversity?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really know the answer to it, other than saying we get so solidified into a photograph and snapshot world instead of realizing the amount of things that have gone on before us. We like to think about what is going on in our world. And I get a big kick out of telling the kids or when talking to others about, they always want to know, how in the world does somebody from Newport, Arkansas become a St. Louis Cardinal, Boston Celtic, and Dallas Cowboy fan? That does not make geographic sense. But we had 3 channels, and on those 3 channels, those were the 3 major programs that played, and that's why you go about that. Now these days they have all these channels. You can watch anything you want. I mean, for sure, anything you want. And they said, well, this is the greatest show ever written. And no, that's Andy Griffith.
Yes, no doubt.
It's not the Housewives of Wynn or whatever it is. And it's just, they're so locked into the moment. And, when Auburn actually came and played here when they were number 1, and Arkansas beat them in a basketball game.
Yeah.
And, people were saying greatest game ever, biggest win ever, greatest crowd ever. And I was like, no, the greatest crowd's never been in Bud Walton Arena. It had been in Barnhill Arena. Do you mean the volleyball place? Yes, the volleyball place. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking you were going to say Pine Bluff on that Sunday afternoon when Arkansas beat North Carolina. And that was, you and I were, same age. I mean, that was incredible. And
and that's
always,
my great friend has been since high school, Charles Valentine. In fact, here in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be inducted into the Newport Hall of Honor, and he will be giving my acceptance speech just as I did for him in 2009. Looking forward to that, getting back to Newport and seeing good friends and all that. But yeah, that was a moment. I've always taken half credit for it because I passed him the ball from 4th grade on for a long, long time. And by the way, back in 4th grade, I was taller than him, scored more points than him in our 4th grade youth team that for some reason was named Camel with a hump on the back.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Now, look, you're right. You had 3 channels, Cardinals, Celtics, and you were a Cowboys fan. How can you not be? Growing up in Memphis, I mean, we were so into the Cowboys in our house. Mom, Dad, Susan, Elizabeth, me. I mean, my mother loved Tom Landry. She thought he was just the first class and loved Dick Vermeil. And there was a photograph of Dick Vermeil and Tom Landry, and they were both with their wives. And it was like an iconic photo to her, like Marilyn Monroe's dress blowing up with the blower on the street. I'm like, Mom, she goes, that man is the finest man. And so when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, she was done with him. She goes, I that man. He fired the love. I'm like, I thought you loved Dad. But, I mean, that's the way it was in Memphis. And you got the TV stations, I'm sure, either Little Rock or Memphis. You probably got some of both. And we get them both over here when we're in parking. But I can see the Celtics, my God. I've got a really good friend from Flomaton, Alabama, down above Pensacola. He grew up a Yankees fan, listening on the radio, and I was with someone yesterday at a meeting over at Rhodes College. Jeff Cleanthes, the baseball coach, 20 plus years. He's won a lot of games at Rhodes College, and I was meeting with him and Matt Dean, who'll be on the next hour. He talked about growing up in Brooklyn. Just you're a Yankees, Mets. Jets, Giants, and now the trifecta for just misery, if you like being miserable, would be the Jets, the Mets, and the Nets. That'd be. But he said he used to go to 50 or 60 Yankee games a year with his dad. I mean, that's what Butch Thompson talks about, and it. It's just baseball is that game that is not like anything else because you can sit out there for hours on end and visit, watch the game. The stronger baseball is, the stronger NASCAR is, and the more people we have hunting and fishing, the better this country is. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've mentioned this before. My wife, Petra, was my 4th grade girlfriend, high school sweetheart, became my wife. But even she knows that the longest love of my life has been baseball. That's and, right. It continues to be. She's the greatest one, but the longest one is baseball. And it just, in so many ways, it encapsulated everything right about sports and the world to me, which is maybe a little too deep philosophically. But again, it's just been the thing for me.
Yeah. I mean, you go to St. Louis, it is, I think, the greatest baseball town in America. You can say New York, but New York is so big. St. Louis is big, don't get me wrong. But good God, Laclede's Landing, downtown, in the art, the baseball culture there is, and what's right across the street from the Cardinals, Busch Stadium, is the International Bowling Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. People forget about that. There's some great bowlers that are enshrined there. All right, I want to break down some stuff here. You got 9 starters coming back, though, on offense and defense. And guys have to make positions. I'm actually, talking with one of my friends in Tuscaloosa. His son going into his senior year has been playing inside, and the coaches have asked him, he's a hell of a player. I mean, he's got it. And they're saying, hey, we want you to play outside linebacker. And I think of a conversation I had with former Auburn coach Gene Chizik. I said, how did you get Carlos Dansby to move? He goes, well, after practice one day, I said, Carlos, I've coached 2 Jim Thorpe Award winners. I think you could be an all-SEC defensive back. But your money position going forward, I believe, is linebacker. And I'd like you to switch to linebacker. He said, let me think about it for a day or two. Next day, he switched. Carlos Dansby had a 16-year career in the NFL. And you think about the positions. 9 starters coming back, 41 new guys, Dudley. Break down the strengths. Let's start with the defense. It's going to be different this year. You got a new system on defense and offense, but let's start with the defense.
Yeah, more attacking this year from T. Will and Marcus Wooten and the guys over there, Deke Adams, the defensive line coach. They really have made it stress the fact that they not only want to stop the run at the line of attack better than they have, recently, but also go after the quarterback some, because they believe that on all 3 levels now they have depth, they have the quality players that they need. They really went after defensive linemen to make sure they shored that up, and they brought in several via the transfer portal. And you've got several that are here that should blossom this year. At least that's the plan for everyone. But I do think that what we're going to see is a defense that takes more chances, doesn't play as safe, and usually, that's hit or miss, either a home run or not. But I do think that's what they're going into the fall planning on doing. And I think the kids, even though some of them, as you said, are in their 20s, are excited about that. And there's nothing wrong with what Barry Odom did here, nothing wrong with what Kendall Browse did here. But when you bring new players, when you bring new coaches into a situation, there's an energy level that goes up, and you could see that at practice, spring practice.
Well, in Dudley, you're right about Kendall Browse and Barry Odom. They're both gone. You have about a 3-year shelf life of an offense or defense, unless you're willing to change it. And Hugh Freeze talked about that at media days. He goes, look, I started looking around, and, I've been around this league a while. And a lot of the guys I've coached and have worked for me, they're out there on the other side of the field. I spent a lot of time with coaches like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. I have to be thinking about, okay, how much have I given away? That's why I brought in Philip Montgomery. So it's always changing. Travis Williams, Marcus Woodson, that the way their defense will be, I'll guarantee you right now, Dudley, a steamer pack of crystals and a 30 rack of hams. Your defensive backs improvement will be like a 180. I haven't seen many guys that can recruit like Marcus Woodson, but also develop players, and he'll work you like a rented mule, but you'll love him for it.
Yeah, and I can already tell that from talking to the guys, listening to the players that are back there who were really encouraged with what they were doing during spring practice. Have had some conversations with them this summer while out at 7-on-7 events up at Arkansas and all that, and they're very excited about it. I again stick to my stance that there's something to be said for introducing new energy into a program. Doesn't mean that the other guys weren't good at what they did, but there's just that element that you can't do the same thing every day and expect it to get better if the kids aren't on board fully.
Yeah, and you've been out there at the 7-on-7s this summer. Do you like 7-on-7s, or you think it ought to be 11-on-11 because it's such a focus on skill positions, and it's just kind of the linemen, we don't worry, it'll all work out. Well, that's probably why we're having such a shortage of elite linemen. Can you name me 2 or 3 All-American candidates on an SEC among the SEC right now on the offensive line? Those guys have become almost invisible. They always have been kind of, but the fans of the particular schools knew about them, and now we're just not developing them.
Well, I think 7-on-7 is a great thing for keeping kids in shape for in the month of June, being able to get your quarterback some work, your wide receivers, obviously defensive backs and all that. Now, I did have, I believe it was Brad Bolding, who the great coach at Little Rock Parkview, who said that, June is like for 7-on-7. Then go to some team camps and it's 11-on-11. The mentality starts changing during the summer months, and then you're 11-on-11 for sure once you get there. But I do think it has its place. It's just, as you said, and Clay Henry, who I worked for so much for so long at the Hogs Illustrated, it was one of those things that he stressed, back and forth. His dad, Orville Henry, did. Before that, you win in the trenches. You win with the guys who allow you to go north and south. Yes, the game has changed, but I still believe in that. You have got to be be able to control the line of scrimmage. And with 7-on-7, you just don't get those guys, the offensive line, defensive line guys, as much work as you could. But what do? You can't work them 365, 24/7.
No. Yeah. Well, last week, Sam Pittman, you could tell in the tone of his voice and his remarks, he took an awful lot of pride in the fact that 9 guys weren't available for any number of reasons, but they were not available for the Liberty Bowl against Kansas. Hogs are up at one point, 38-13. Lance Leipold and the Kansas Jayhawks, they weren't done. That game went to triple overtime. I was there. Great crowd of fans of both schools. But that right there says a lot to me about where Sam Pittman wants to get this program. It's like, look, either you're all in or your ass is out of here. I like that.
Yeah, and I will tell you that the 2 play calls during last season that I'll never forget. Kendall Browse having Trey Knox come in from tight end and get under snap at Missouri. I think if he doesn't do that, Arkansas goes ahead and scores there and wins the game. The second play was the bringing basically your backup quarterback in, and it was just a wide receiver and a little flip pass in the backfield instead of letting your quarterback, who's had such a great game, just handle it there at the end. Those are 2 plays that I have to think the offensive coordinators / head coaches were going, why in the world did we do that? It seemed like a good idea at the time, but you're in nut cutting time. It's got to be the play, and those are not the plays you bring out. I don't care how cute, how fancy they are. 1 yard, go north and south. I mean, your quarterback weighs 245.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, we're talking with Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net on the Chad House, ECS House Industries Razorback Report. They're located in Cherry Valley, right in the heart of the Delta, Cherry Valley, Arkansas. The Better Roller, the Pulverizer, the Better Chopper. Dudley, it's funny. Last night, Donnie Raines, one of our neighbors, works for Mr. Brenner over here. They farm a bunch of land around here. And Mr. Brenner's 96, still out there riding the land every day. What a life, man. But we're talking about just all the equipment and the machinery. Everywhere you go, you see it. You see a farm, you will see something that was made by ECS House Industries. Chad, great guy, and just so proud and so lucky to have great sponsors like ECS House Industries. Dudley, let's switch gears now. And I want to talk, you talked a lot about the receivers, how tall these guys are. And you look at primary strengths, primary weaknesses of a team. And it's all about just getting a lot of repetitions. But a lot of criticism went toward Kendall Browse, and then they attacked KJ Jefferson. Again, he'd been there. That was his 3rd year. It's hard to be that different. What's the biggest difference with Dan Enos that you think Hog fans and opponents of Arkansas can expect to see this year?
Well, I think there's only 3 years in this program that they've had over 5,000 total yards in a season. He had one of those when he was here. It was a comment when Brandon Allen was the quarterback, who's now the backup quarterback for Joe Burrow at the Cincinnati Bengals. It continues to get closer to the pension plan that the NFL has without having to get in situations to get hurt or anything. Yeah. But, he obviously likes both the passing and running, both attacks, but he does it in a balanced situation. I think they'll see more double tight end sets. I think the tight end will become an even more of a weapon now that they've stocked up that room a little bit. But the biggest thing I think he'll do is he'll be a voice that for lack of a better way of putting it, Dan Enos has a much better reputation on the football field than Browse had, in a certain way. And so I think that kids are following that. I think, KJ has talked a lot about how much he respects Coach Enos, how he thinks he can get him to play better in college and make him a better pro at the same time. There's a lot to be said for a kid's head who, respects the coach and knows that he's sent guys to the NFL before, or has helped develop them and get them to the NFL. And so I think mental-wise, it's going to be big as well as having more two tight end sets. When you grow up in Newport, Arkansas, or in Balls, Arkansas, I go to school in Newport, Arkansas, you learned that running the football was the way to do things, or at least having that mentality. As I mentioned a second ago, I used to joke that Coach Bill Kitty, we had a balanced attack. We ran the ball to Billy Warren forever, and we would throw the pass once to the right, once to the left, and once over the middle. And that was our balanced attack. 3 passes and 60 running plays. That's what happened, and it worked for us. So.
Well, I mean, you look at Navy and the triple option. A team like that, the service academies, it's the best offense for Air Force, Navy, Army to run, because they only need about a half a dozen passes to be completed, and then everybody starts playing back. All right, 2 areas, and if you can stay on, I hope you can, because I love to get into this conversation with the guys who cover, the beat writers and reporters who cover the different schools. Gary Harris be on with us here in a few minutes, but give me a couple of names that you think Arkansas fans aren't talking about right now that are going to be big contributors in your mind for the 23 season.
Well, I've talked about the tall wide receivers, but it's the fastest wide receiver I think that's going to have the biggest year. Isaiah Satega, who was here from Fayetteville, at one point was committed to Texas A&M, ended up coming here, battled an injury to start throughout the year, really showed out in spring practice. I really think he's going to have a great year. He's the speed option of all those big wide receivers. So I think he's one that definitely is going to be there. And then it's hard for me. There's so many people back there, new people back there in the secondary. The young man from Baylor, Walcott, was given votes. I think second or third team all SEC in the defensive backfield at safety, and they feel really good about what they've got back there now, not only in terms of talent, but in terms of experience and in terms of being into the same mind melt philosophy that Marcus Wooten has back there. That you're going to see, I think, much better play from the secondary this year than that's even with Quincy McAdoo, who had the car wreck, and it's probably going to be not available this year. I mean, we'll know more on that lately. Luckily, he survived the car wreck, and that's the most important thing. But I do think that Abraham Walcott and Isaiah Satania would be my picks for surprises that people are not talking about enough.
In this recruiting class Arkansas just brought in, just as you see it, who is the best player or the one most likely to contribute immediately? And that probably has a lot to do with who's already there.
High school was Luke Haas, the tight end from Bixby, Oklahoma, who was originally committed to Oklahoma. His family has been Arkansas fans that helped work it out for them. I think he's a guy that Alabama, Auburn, Arkansas, everybody in the SEC, everybody in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. By the way, it's going to be interesting. Colorado going back to the Big 12, and maybe Memphis joining. We'll see. But I think Luke Haas I think is going to be the guy over there at tight end, and then Nico DeValier, which is fun to say, is a defensive lineman who came in last year and had some times when he flashed. Like, he has the opportunity to, as a high school kid, even though it's his second year, to really come on this year and be a force there on the defensive line. So those are 2 guys that I would point to.
Well, and you mentioned, the newcomers coming in, and again, it all depends on the position, but the tight end, that's the one everybody always says, we're going to be better with tight end. You got the guy, you know what Bixby, Oklahoma is famous for? One of Roy D. Mercer's best ever deals. Guy said he called the place, and the guy said he lived in Bixby, Oklahoma, and that's where they have turf farms for growing grass. And Roy D. Mercer said, well, you got any Babylonian gardens out there? I'd have to find to get a tour group out there for you. And guy said, well, I mean, there's nothing to do in Bixby. And Roy D. goes, well, my God, it's got to be something to do. I got a couple of tour buses I want to bring out there. And he said, sir, I mean, we're just a bedroom community of Tulsa. And we have, I mean, if you want to watch grass grow, and he goes, well, that might not be so bad. and I've never heard of anybody coming from Bixby, Oklahoma, but it's a suburb of Tulsa. And you're talking about a tight end. Arkansas has been doing a great job with the tight end. Everybody's going to start recruiting them harder, especially because of Brock Bowers at Georgia. That's going to be fun.
Luke and Dylan Haas, his brother, both will be Razorbacks this year, and they were part of a Bixby program that I want to say off the top of my head that won 65 games in a row or something crazy like that, and were just excellent. Every time they took the field. So
yeah, and we've been talking about this Colorado to the Big 12 for a while. Arizona State, Utah. I can see Utah and BYU bringing the Holy War to the Big 12, Memphis to the Big 12. Things are starting to happen. It's hot enough. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back after this with Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net, Gary Harris down in Tuscaloosa. This is Thursday's edition of Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Dudley, I just got a text from someone that said Gums, the transfer from North Texas, is a stud. He said he looks like a Greek god. One of the Arkansas players said he's really developed. Look, North Texas, a lot of schools went into North Texas. Again, I want football to be good everywhere. I'm damn sure not a socialist, but I'm saying football, when it's good, when NASCAR is good, when you got a paper mill in the town, usually got great high school football. I'm not surprised, though. It's the state of Texas. I think a lot of these kids are going to a school like North Texas and spending a couple of years, and then they're ready to go. They put out more Division I players from in the state of Texas than any other state in America, but about 15-20% of the quarterbacks around the country in a given year are Texas high school products. Are you surprised by that?
Yeah, Texas had concentrated on football for a long time, and most of their quarterbacks that come out of there are very well coached, and face great competition. Gums is going to be a very good player as well. That tight end room took in Luke Haas, Shamar Easter, the young man from Arkansas that was such a great overall talent in many sports, and then Gums, to add to what they had left over. And those are three guys, all three, I think, that are going to see plenty of playing time. But Gums is the one who comes in with experience, who committed to Arkansas, decided to take a look at a couple of West Coast schools and stepped out of his commitment, decommitted there for a little while, and then decided that it was the best situation here. So, he's another name. And again, I think the tight end room, no disrespect to any of the guys that were here before, and some of those are still here. But there are guys that just have more individual talent that are now in that room.
Yeah, it is. Gary Harris checks in with us down in Tuscaloosa. Gary, Audrey and I were watching Tuesday night on YouTube, Tighter Insider TV. That's a great show. Dudley, do y'all do anything like that, like a 30-minute TV show, Hogville.net? I mean, we ought to watch that, what Gary and Rodney Orr of Tighter Insider do. It's a great show. You'd be a natural at it.
Each week Otis Kirk, who's our football main beat writer, Kevin McPherson, who's our basketball writer, we all do a YouTube each week that where we talk about different things that's going on. So that's our foray into it.
Yeah, well, I love it. Gary, welcome to Sidelines on this Thursday morning. It's been crazy. I was up at Media Days last week. I got to do the walk and talk with a big guy, J.C. Latham, walking through the lobby. And, man, I asked him a question. I said, you play at Alabama. You're never going to get a day off. Nobody's going to be sleeping on y'all. You're going to get their best shot. You might be the biggest game of the year. You might be the biggest game in school history. Alex is a sharp young man, and he's got that warrior ethos mentality. But you pointed out on Tyler and Sider the other night, only 3 Alabama players, and Dudley, you saw that on the preseason All-SEC team. And Lane Kiffin, I'm standing in that room right next to him, and he says some people had done that. He said, thanks for pissing Saban off. I mean, I think people underestimate, because we're all the same age, roughly. I mean, just because he's 71 does not mean he's competitive. I mean, I know plenty of old people, say 80s and 90s, that still work out every day. I think he's absolutely loving all of this, what's going on, Gary.
Well, I think you make a good point. And in Saban's case, there were times after practice last year that I thought, well, man, I am starting to see him aging. But I thought at Media Days he looked great. I thought he looked rejuvenated. And, you could take 10 people that are 75 years old and line them up, and you might have 1 or 2 that look 60 and 2 or 3 that look like they're, ready to pass over to the other side, So age is a number that we use as a barometer for where we're at in our lives, but it's relative to the individual that we're talking about. And in Nick Saban's case, I've watched him the entire time that he's been here. And, when I look back at video of 2007, 2008, I can see that he's older, but he still, when he stands up there at that podium, does not come across as, how we'd expect a 71-year-old guy to come across. So, I don't think that's an issue. I don't think his age is an issue. No. I don't think he works any less intensely than he did when he got here. I think the issue is that, this league, because Alabama set the bar so high once Saban got here, you got 14 teams that are trying to win, man. And of course, 2 more coming in next year. I tell people all the time, when you do what Alabama's done, it's remarkable because they're not playing teams that are just olaying and said, okay, we're going to take our L Saturday. I mean, when you get good and you set the bar, now Georgia's doing it, everybody else is chasing you. And, everybody's committed to football in this conference, even Vanderbilt. I mean, maybe not to the same extent but Arkansas and Texas A&M and Tennessee and South Carolina and Florida, they're all trying to win too. And you really, I think in this conference probably should not be able to do what Nick Saban has done. It just doesn't, even last year, and I heard a debate the other day on the show that said, well, is Alabama back? I didn't realize Alabama had gone anywhere. I mean, I know they didn't make it to the SEC championship game last year, but they still went 11-2 and lost 2 games on the road on the final play of the game. So I think he's right there. I think it's tougher now, and I do think that the game has changed. I do think the athlete has changed, and I do think as far as the fans, I saw it, before with even Coach Bryant. When you win a lot, guys, the fans do get a little spoiled. They don't mean to, but I saw what it was like going through the Shula years. And when Saban got here, the fan base was hungry. I mean, they wanted it bad and they supported everything. Now, I hear people complaining about the collective. Well, I'm not paying $18 a month. They got plenty of money. You start to sense that the fans have started taking it for granted. So I just think there's a number of factors. If Alabama has slipped, it's not maybe as much Alabama as it is other teams in the league, particularly Georgia, and also just the kind of the where we're at in this conference. It's hard to get to the top. It's harder to stay there. But I don't think Nick Saban's slipped at all. I really don't.
Dudley.
He always commands respect. He always looks pissed off / focused to me. I am sure he cracks jokes every once in a while, but I don't know that I've seen too many of them. He always seems to be hyper, intensified on what he's doing, And I do think that, as Gary has gone over and some others, maybe they don't have as much experience, especially at quarterback, but would I ever pick them to finish 8-4 as I saw somebody did the other day? Absolutely not. I mean, that's anytime that Alabama plays a team other than Georgia, you're not going to get me to pick Alabama. And pick the other team. I'm always going to pick Alabama. Except now, I would have to, especially if I was in the standings race, I would have to pick Georgia. But that's the here and now. They've won 2 in a row, and are the class of the league now, and all that does is just get him mad and gets his players mad. And so I expect him to rebound, to bounce back from that horrible 11-2 year.
Yeah. Gary, you said a couple of things last year. I remember pulling up to my mother-in-law's in Clarksville. Audrey and I were coming back from Knoxville from the Tennessee-Alabama game. And you said, Rob, basically, and this was, whatever we talked about, but this was something you said on the show before, but you said, when Alabama loses now, it's epic. And another thing you said last year, very prophetic statement about NIL. When Alabama fans complaining about giving to these collectives and all this stuff, and, we've got to be, he goes, well, we've done it. We are the pinnacle of college football. Expand on that and see if that's changed any.
Well, Alabama won so much, and even when they lost under Nick Saban, outside of the Clemson game and the national championship, they just weren't. I can't think of any time that when they lost, even that they got handled, other than that one game. And even when they lost, whether it was the comeback 9-6 to LSU in overtime, Johnny Manziel, kick 6. The way that they lost even was epic. They were so good that even when you beat them, number one, you had to have a good team. you had to have a special player, you had to have a special performance, or you had to do something special. And even last year in that Tennessee game, and we know what Tennessee's offense did, but Alabama matched them. Bryce Young threw the ball up and down the field too, and in that game, Alabama, I know the defense just got rattled, but everybody's saying you got to make a play, and I think they felt like they made a play on that interception. And then I still think that was a very questionable pass interference. But even after that, the way Tennessee won the game was epic. Alabama's got the ball, and you're thinking Alabama's going to either win it on a field goal or a touchdown, or we're going to overtime. And on the second down call, O'Brien dialed it up, and Bryce Young hit Gibbs right in the chest. I've never seen him drop that ball other than that one time. He catches, he's probably still running. But then on the third down play, I do think that's where they should have ran the ball. Should have got to try to get a few more yards for Reichard, run the clock down, 2 or 3 seconds, either kick the field goal and win it or go to overtime. They threw the ball, they stopped the clock. Still, Tennessee had to go 45 yards or whatever in 15 seconds with no timeouts, and they did it. And then the kid hits a knuckleball. That's all it was. It was a knuckleball, but somehow he got high enough and stayed high enough to get over that crossbar. And then the result was we had one of the all-time celebrations. So it was an epic loss for Alabama, and it was a program building win for Tennessee. You got to remember they had not won that game. They lost 15 straight, which was a period of 16 years. It was 2006 that they had won. And very similar situation at LSU. LSU played a great game, but still Alabama could have won. And I give Brian Kelly a lot of credit. They got behind by a touchdown in overtime. They scored a touchdown. Daniels on the first play went 25 yards, and he didn't fool with it. He said, we're either going to win it or lose it right here. The longer this game goes, probably the less our chances are of winning. And he went for it, and he won. And, you got a celebration again. That's kind of what it's become when you beat Alabama. It's not just winning a game. It's an epic win for you. Now that may change. If you didn't go to Atlanta last year. I think it's always going to be a big deal to beat Alabama because, like we've talked about, Rob, it's like the Yankees or the Cowboys or something like that. But if you don't win at that level over time, it's still a big win, but it's not a monumental or epic win. So for those to continue, then Saban's got to get back to the top. And if he doesn't do it this year, then that will be first time since he's gotten here that he's gone 3 years without a championship. So it's a big year for Nick Saban. And to kind of piggyback on what people were saying, I do think there are question marks about this team. I really do. I think, not knowing who the quarterback is, all that, that's happened in the past here. But I think there are questions about what this team's going to look like on offense and even on defense, which to me is the biggest area where they need to kind of shore things up. I mean, they've got to get better at being more consistent and not getting gassed with the big plays. The big plays on offense are really what have killed Alabama's defense the last few years.
Yeah. And I will tell you that Alabama, has been the end all be all in this conference for so long, and that I have for, I believe it's 16 straight years in my writing on the Arkansas-Alabama game, have somewhere in the first or second paragraph have said, this year we'll say, Arkansas, which has not beaten Alabama in its last 16 attempts. That's when Coach Pittman has his team beat Alabama, then that will be, a point that has not been around here for a long time.
Right.
That Arkansas fans will go nuts over.
I agree.
Yeah.
And Arkansas has been. I remember 2014. There in Fayetteville, that's a game that I think Arkansas feels like they should have won. And they've had a couple opportunities even last year. After that nice comeback. But I agree with Dudley there, Rob. When Arkansas wins, much like with Tennessee last year, when you haven't beaten somebody in your league for that long a period of time, even if Alabama's not at the top, that'll be a huge win for Arkansas football. There's no doubt about it.
It will. Dudley, I know you got to get going. Let people know how they can follow you, keep up with all the great work you're doing. And as always, we appreciate having you on here on the ECS House Industries Razorback Report every week.
You bet. Hogville.net is our website, covering lots of sports right now as they start getting geared up. Fearless Friday is the high school site, fearlessfriday.com, continuing to put out some high school stories. And then, I've been a little excited about the fact that the Cardinals have won a few games here lately. They're still not going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a fire sale or something akin to it here. But, you can find that on my Twitter, Dead Sports, DD Sports. And, at least it brings a little sunshine into my life while watching baseball these days.
I love it. All right, man. We'll see you next week. Take care. Drink a lot of water. Watch this heat, man.
Always. Later.
All right.
See you later.
All right. Gary, and I think that what I saw at Media Days is people start looking for anything at the top, okay? And this is year number 8 for Kirby Smart at Georgia.
Gosh, time flies.
I know. Year 17.
It seems like it was just yesterday, and we're sitting out there celebrating the national championship with Kirby on the field for the last time out in Arizona against Clemson. Now it's been 8 years. Unbelievable. It
is, and so here it is. Nick Saban and the staff, they made changes. Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator, has come in. Defense, Kevin Steele's back. You and Rodney talked about that. I think Kevin Steele is a damn good defensive coordinator. I mean, he's an elite defensive coordinator. This is his 3rd time with Nick Saban. There's certain places where a guy like Kevin Steele is going to thrive, and it's at Alabama. You got 8 5-star linebackers on that roster. 8. Is that definitely going to be the strength of the team, or is Alabama going to start getting the Daron Paynes, the Quinnen Williams, Marcel Darius? That's what's, to me, been missing. Last year, Will Anderson, like Roman Harper said up at Media Days, and Dallas Turner said, if you're going to be the big guy, the big guy, you can't have a game when you got a 0 out the side of your name. You got to step it up. Isn't it hard the year after you, like Will Anderson, have 17 sacks to do it the next year? I mean, and there's also guys behind them that are pushing, but what's going to be different about this Alabama defense?
Well, getting back to Will Anderson, he definitely did not have as good a year last year as he had as a sophomore season. And don't get me wrong, he is, it's not Leroy Jordan, it's not Derek Thomas, it's not Cornelius Bennett, it's not Rolando McClain, it's not C.J. Mosley. Will Anderson is the most honored and decorated defensive player in Alabama football history, and he's a really good player. But I thought last year, he was good. I didn't think he was dominant. And but he's not here. And you mentioned something with edge rushers are awesome. I agree, man. Coming off the edge, if you got a guy who can get to the quarterback, it impacts the game. But you come off the edge, quarterback can still step up in the pocket. Where it's really troublesome is, if you have edge pressure and then you push the pocket from the inside, and then if the quarterback steps up, he gets sacked. And that's what Alabama has had in the past when they've had great defensive teams. I'm not sure that, they've had that the last couple of years as much. So it's going to be up to Jaheim Otis and Tim Smith and Boygby, who's coming back after, the situation last year with an injury, to start pushing that pocket. And again, nothing like watching a great edge rusher operate, man. Yeah. Blowing by that tackle. But still, you see it a lot where, an edge rusher doesn't make the play because the quarterback is elusive enough. Like I said, if he can step up into the pocket, he can avoid the rush and still get the ball off. If the edge rusher comes and then there's a push there, he steps up, he gets into traffic and he gets hit. So I'm with you there. I think the interior defensive line play needs to be better. And I don't think it's a lack of talent. I mean, I just named you three guys who I think, are premier level talents in the SEC. I think Jaheim Otis, if he will, progress based on his freshman season, has a chance to be dominant. But I thought that about Tim Smith when he was a freshman. And now, he's good, but he hasn't been dominant. So I think that's an area, there's a lot of talent at linebacker, but you still have to, sort it out, and guys still have to make plays. It's I understand the rating system. I do. And I, would always say, if you're recruiting, I'd much rather sign a highly rated recruiting class. I think over time, the best high school players are going to be the best college players. The best college players are going to be the best NFL players, but not always. There are exceptions to the rule. And particularly now, where I think with the portal and with the ability to check out, so to speak, I think you have some guys that are highly recruited that once they get to a school, and Alabama's a perfect example because there's so many high recruited players, that in the past, I think they stayed engaged. And I think they felt there was a need to have some patience. Hey, I'm going to get my turn. Now, I think oftentimes, if you're a five-star recruit, you're buried on the depth chart, I think you could see this impact teams where guys, it's important for everybody to be engaged, not just the starters. It's important when you're in practice that those guys that are on the scout team, that they're engaged and they're helping them get better. I'm not sure that's the case with every player anymore. A guy gets to a school, doesn't think he's going to get an opportunity to play, and he's like, man, I'm out of here. As soon as the season's over, I'm in the portal. And I think that can impact your team. So having a lot of highly rated, players is good because it means you have talent, but it's still about development. It's still about work ethic. It's still about guys buying in. If you have a guy who's a five-star talent, but he's not on board with the program, he's not going to help your football team. So I think we've got more of that than ever before. And I know in this Shangri-La society of everything's great with NIL, and a lot of our media brethren don't see any problem with players calling the shots. I do. And I'm in the minority here. I do think there needs to be some rules and regulations with NIL. I think it's fine to have it in place, but I think that and I saw where Trent Dilfer at the American Athletic Conference Media Day made a great point. Everybody's saying everything's fine. Yeah, if you're a Power 5 and you just cherry picking the portal but for schools like that, his point is, there needs to be some rules, and you don't need to have player personnel directors from these Power 5s actively recruiting players off of other rosters. So I don't think NIL, while it's here and I see some benefits to it, this philosophy that I'm hearing from a lot of my media brethren, that there are no problems because college football is flourishing financially and TV. Well, if you look under the surface, that's not necessarily the case. And I know I've gotten off the
you're right.
Subject
Keep
a little
going.
bit, but I just think that with Alabama, it isn't enough anymore, or any of these schools, just to say, well, they got better players, they should win every game. And it's never really been. I think that's too simplistic anyway. But now more than ever, just because you've got a talented roster, it doesn't guarantee you success. There's got to be buy-in. There's got to be players that are engaged, even if they're not starters. And I don't know anymore that on all of these teams, if there's guys, we've seen guys even leave. I remember a couple of years ago, Alabama signed a player, a defensive back out of Philadelphia, Mississippi. He didn't get through. I don't think he got through a handful of practices. I mean, he showed up for fall camp and he may not have even practiced. I mean, he showed up and he left before, he was even here good because, players now know that they can leave. And in the past, it was difficult enough that if there was a bumpy road in your development or where you were as a player, you were still more apt to stick it out because you didn't want to have to sit out a year. You didn't want to have to start over. But now it's just so easy that I think the first time players feel like, they've been disrespected or they're behind a guy they shouldn't be behind. They're just like, I'm out of here. So I think talent's one aspect of it, but I think it's the coaches that can keep their players together, that can develop the talent that they have and, navigate through all of this stuff that's going on and keep their roster committed to winning, that are going to have some success. And one other thing on NIL, I see some people who have a vested interest, I think, through some of these websites, and they keep talking about how great it is. Oh, and players, but I see some of them, they never, ever, ever say anything about the games. It's never about the games. It's never about the competition. It's never about the heart of what college football is. It's all about the money. They ought to be allowed to do this, and they ought to be allowed to do this, and they ought to be allowed to do that. And, they want to have these what are they? These value systems where they attach, I've said before to you, Rob, these
non-fundable tokens.
Yeah. When you get a kid in high school and you say his NIL value is $685,000. Well, what's the first thing he's thinking? I need to get $685,000 to play college football.
Exactly.
So I just see a lot of people talking about how great NIL is. But most of them that are saying that, it has nothing to do with the game. It's all about how a player can profit, how maybe we can profit as a business, how agents and managers can profit. So ultimately, we'll see where it goes. But I am in favor of I don't think there's anything. If you don't like the NCAA, that's fine. And I understand the NCAA is a whipping boy, and they've screwed up probably more times than not. But if you're against rules and regulations, to me, I think you're against college sports, because I think ultimately there has to be a system of rules and regulations for college sports to continue the way we know it. Otherwise, it's just going to become chaos, in my opinion.
Well, I'm with you about this NIL.
I got to go too. I just realized
all they talk about is money. But look, Gary, great commentary. It's one of your best segments ever, because they all talk about, I hate these garbage terms, the bling and the flash. Look, get an education, focus on football. And I've never had any clients give their 18-year-olds money before like this. This is crazy. How do they follow you, Gary?
At Gary Harris _WVUA on Twitter. Got a Gary Harris WVUA Facebook page. We have websites for both the TV and the radio station. Thanks, Rob. Got to go.
You bet. Have a great show. That is Gary Harris, man. Love having him on here. Tide 100.9 WVUA TV 23. And look, you're a Bama fan and you want to know what's going on with the Tider Insider, Rodney Orr and Gary Harris. They do a great show Tuesday nights on YouTube, Tider Insider TV. It's up there. You catch it live or catch it later. Just like this show. Catch us live Monday through Saturday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, or anytime, as Nigel, our web designer, says, at your leisure. How do the British take a word, Leisure, that the Americans say leisure, and they say leisure? They don't go on vacation. They go on holiday. And they don't go to the hospital. He's in hospital. He's in hospital. I love the British. And Nigel, if you're listening from Hereford, England, you got to love it. They speak the King's English in a different way than we do. I think there's 28 words that are spelled exactly the same that don't mean the same thing in the English language. So that's interesting. Hey, Matt Dean's going to check in with us in just a moment, along with John Hartwell, AD Angle. What I want to do, I want to get into this NIL and proposed changes by Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama, Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, about trying to save college athletics. And I don't know if getting the federal government involved, I mean, they could screw up a 2-car funeral. They got more money than anybody. Hell, they print money. And all they do is make situations worse and they don't demand accountability. So, this is significant, but this all this stuff happened yesterday. And Matt, you and I weren't even talking about it in our meeting yesterday, but you think about what is going on with NIL, and I'm thinking about some of Franz Beard's comments yesterday. He really nailed it about the proposed NIL changes. All I can say is we better be really careful of getting the Federal Trade Commission involved. And what we need, though, more than anything, is the NCAA needs to have better people running it. But like Gary Harris just said, too many of these conversations are just about the money for these kids and not the games.
Yeah, we've been moving, Rob, and good morning, towards a pro model the last 2 years, don't you think? I mean, everything we're talking about is no longer an amateur athletics situation. I'll even take it a step further. You see over this past year, a scattering of student athletes at the college level get investigated for gambling now. Okay. Well, in our society, how many people have an app that daily they go in there and they play some kind of bet? I don't care. DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, so it's almost like everything is a double standard here. From day one, I have preached, if you're going to do this, you need to have a salary cap. And let's be transparent. And let's hire Coach Sherrill as the commissioner, like we talked about months ago. The problem is it's the wild, wild west. I know this recent legislation now may take it to a different level from scrutiny-wise. But, man, Rob, there are just too many levels out there in the NCAA. If we're going to do this, they need to look – if there's going to be a pro model, they need to look at something that is at least almost like a baseball salary cap so the small market can have a chance against the big market. And that's probably not going to happen, Rob, but it's frustrating to talk about this every day when the reality is we know it's going to continue to exist at a fairly inequitable pace, right?
I agree with you. And this talk about you got to be at a school for 3 years before you can transfer.
Right.
And but I believe you need to be in good academic standing before you transfer. But there's got, look, you can't in business. This all goes back to when the antitrust laws were put into place by Senator John Sherman in 1890 from Ohio. But it's not a constitutional amendment, and so it can be overturned by Congress. I don't know how much of an appetite to do that they have, but the Tuberville-Manchin bill to save college sports, if you're going to get the federal government involved, Federal Trade Commission on violations of rules or whatever, that creates a whole nother nightmare situation where we have, a two-tiered system. Look, most Americans have lost faith in every branch of the federal government. And now we want them to try to fix one of our sacred cows, college sports. I mean, we're really being stupid here to even consider this. I mean, some of the stuff in their rule, I believe is good, Matt, but you're an administrator, you're an athletic director and a coach. What do you think? And John Hartwell was at Wrigley Field last night when he was texting me, and I haven't heard from him yet. Hopefully he'll be with us here in the morning, but Wrigley can suck the life out of you.
Well, you mentioned something, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned something about 3 years so you can transfer. Did you mention that? Is that
I believe that's what I read. Yeah, you got to be in school.
Listen, I'd be totally against that. There are so many situations young kids get into that it's not the right fit, right? And they have to have some freedom of movement. Now, should we allow multiple transfers to play sports? Yeah, that's a great question. And that's what's happening in our current portal system, right? We're having that kids playing on their third team, sometimes by their third or fourth year, right?
Yeah.
But now, I just think we need to take this to the next level and be transparent completely about it and say, okay, this is the cap for this sport. Another thing that's really amazing to me is we're not having any discussion about the inequities of money being spent on NIL, man versus woman. I'm surprised there's not more Title IX implications. I'm not a Title IX expert, but my gosh, now you do have examples. I believe it's Olivia Dunn at LSU, right? She's got a tremendous deal, and there are some women athletes. I think the twins down at Miami, basketball players. I can't remember their name, but there are some women athletes that are really doing well in the NIL market. But across the board, it's not exactly what we thought about it. It's almost like when we go back and we talk about it. When we talked about NIL the very first time, when it was an introductory, it was supposed to be an inducement. The student athlete was supposed to basically go there and seek out his or her name, like an image, right? Well, that's not been going down from the start. It's been incentivized by the coaches, and it's really been taken out of the student athlete's hands. And they're not even, the spirit of the rule are not correctly applying. You know what I'm saying, Rob?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Tuberville gets it because he's a coach, and he's talking to coaching friends, I'm sure, all over the country that are saying, man, this is just wreaking havoc on us. But Joe Manchin is very close friend of Nick Saban.
Yeah.
So there's Auburn and Alabama's influence again. Now, let's go back to something that you said about the inequity of male versus female athletes. It's like, I think John Hartwell brought it up on the show a couple of weeks ago on the AD angle. 97.3% of the NIL money is going toward male athletes. I mean, that's the free market. You can't make people do it, but at the same time, what's it doing for you've got the Olivia Dunns, and you've got Suni Lee, who was at Auburn the last 2 years, the gold medalist. She was getting a couple $100,000 per appearance to be on Dances with the Stars. I think she did that 8 times when she first got to Auburn, but they're not going to be that many. It's like the Olympics. It's very similar to a handful of people will make a lot of money on endorsements after they're in the Olympics, but it's a handful.
Right.
And really a deeper dive, Matt, wouldn't you say there's a handful of guys, male athletes, that are making significant money. The rest of them might be doing a trade to wear some clothes or get some, free food or something like that. But there's not just money flowing everywhere at every school like people think there is. And we got to get back to focusing on the games. The people behind NIL are basically a bunch of athletic pimps. Okay. That's what they are. They're prostituting these athletes out there and trying to say they've been victimized, and the NCAA and all these colleges have been making all this money off the backs of these athletes. You know what? These student athletes are also provided an incredible platform to get a college degree. They've got everything paid for, and I'm tired of the BMW culture. They need to just think about what they're doing to college athletics. We're supposed to be preparing these student athletes for life. This isn't how life works. If you quit jobs every 3 months and try to switch around, you're never going to amount to a damn thing.
Rob, I also want to credit, there are a lot of student athletes doing it the right way. They're showing up on campus.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
They're going out and they're creating, and after we met yesterday, it was a great lunch with you and
it was
Lee Camp. But I had a conversation with a high school coach about a college athlete, and this basketball player is going out doing his thing and getting significant money quarterly from a Power 5, and didn't start last year. Okay. And I can't give the name on the radio. But I'm telling you, if you go out and do it the right way, you're going to get compensated for this, and it's still part of the whole, thought process behind this rule, right?
Yeah.
What has happened is the problem with this whole thing, Rob, is that the coaches get their hands on it and they start using it as, recruiting incentives, which was not what it was intended to be. It was intended to be, I show up, you recruit me, Rob. I go there and I look at the businesses in the area and I go, I'll introduce myself. I'm Matt Dean. To you, Rob Browne. You own this dry cleaning company, and I'm going to be there every Saturday or every Friday afternoon after practice. I'm going to go sign autographs to help your business, and also you help me out. I mean, there are a lot of examples that I want to make sure people realize. There are a lot of examples of that going on across the country that is right on spot for the rule. So it is unfair to blanket this and say that everybody is doing this, outside of the lines.
They're not all doing it outside the lines, but a lot of them are. And as Gary Harris said in the segment right before you came on, it's about this money, and we're not hearing about the games. Yeah. We're there to watch football. And look, you're going to see the free market correct this. We don't need the federal government. Again, they're incompetent. Okay. The American people don't trust them.
I think they've proven that the last several years, don't you, Rob?
Yes, exactly. So you need to have self-governance, and maybe you have a commissioner. Let's just forever ban this term czar.
Yeah.
The Russian czars, the Romanovs, it didn't end too well for them. We can have a commissioner. I think of Commissioner Gordon on Batman, but you think about Rick Neuheisel will be a great commissioner too. I've asked him. He said, yeah, I'd love to do it, but we need a group of people that understand what coaches deal with, and guys transferring because you worked them too hard in practice. Well, that says something about their lack of character. I mean, they were raised, in an emasculated culture. That's my opinion. You can't quit. You got to stick it out. You got to fight it out. And when I think about Nico Lamaliva at Tennessee, if in fact he did get an $8 million NIL deal, well, looks like Joe Milton III is going in as the starter at quarterback. Okay, so what are the people that are paying this guy $8 million if, in fact, he's getting that much? And I haven't read the contract. I'm not privy to that, but it's got to have a lot of stuff in it. That's why it's a contract. So does he only get the money if he plays? I would hope so.
Well, Rob, you are a player in the financial world for probably better close to 4 decades. And if a young person got that type of money between 18 and 22 and they went to Rob Browne, it's life-changing. The reality is you're kind of set up for life regardless if you play in the NFL. Yeah. Fair statement? As long as I get my degree, I'm probably good enough to hold a clipboard and be a backup in the NFL for several years at least, then I qualify for the pension. So if this is happening, I truly believe the way Bryce Young performs, he was deserving of whatever he got. We saw him on commercials, so we know that Bryce Young got a chunk of change. I think I think it was around $1 million we heard. And you know, I'm happy for Bryce. I think that's terrific. I don't have many more examples to show you of that going on around the rest of Power 5 football. We hear about it, but I don't see these people on endorsements that are maybe in the local areas of where they play, Rob. Like, I don't know in the Auburn area if we got any billboards or, you know, some of those things going on for some of the Auburn athletes. Now, you mentioned a young lady.
Suni Lee.
Well. Yeah. Yes. But I just think, you know, looking at this moving forward, we know it's not sustainable. The money is running out for some of these kids because I think donors are getting very upset that they invest in someone and they don't finish their college career at that same institution, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as an administrator, Rob, I need that money that you're going to give me. No disrespect to that student athlete, I need it somewhere in our, you know, planning projects for future building enhancements. Correct? I mean,
yes.
You know, I know it's great that you can leave me to some bonds, but I also need your money too, right? So I just don't think this is sustainable, Rob.
No, I know it absolutely is not sustainable. It's a handful, and it's like this in business. You pay somebody 5-year deal to come over and work for your company. They quit 6 months in or a year and a half in.
Right.
They owe the balance.
Right.
And so here's what you need to do. You've got to stick these contracts, stick to them, okay? Tell this young student athlete that thinks they're going to – and let me tell you something. Don't even try to pass that crap on me or on you that, well, the coaches are making all this money. They can leave. They've earned that right.
Yeah.
They didn't start that. When I talk to coaches, and I talk to a lot of them, and you do too, a lot more, whatever the sport, and then they've gotten their team to the final. John Brady, former basketball coach at Samford, LSU, and Arkansas State. I love that guy. And I got to get him back on next week because there's never not a good time to talk about basketball with John Brady. And I said, Coach, you're from Macomb, Mississippi. You've been coaching a while. How much did you make on your first coaching job? He goes, I made $15,000 a year my first 3 years coaching. But I loved the game, and I wanted to do that, so I took whatever they paid me. So don't these athletes, these children, juveniles, trying to tell people, and I'm getting a text here from Clarence Beeks down in Hayhira, Georgia. No sympathy for administrators who issued bonds now and didn't issue them 2 years ago. Okay, sure. I see you. But look, the problem is when you look at this NIL, the coaches have earned that right. Kirby Smart has coached at all levels of college. Good for him getting paid. I mean, it's a lot more money than but you know what? Relative to what he does for the University of Georgia, it might be a discount. So your sports are your front porch of your university to the rest of the world. So you think so this 17, 18-year-old kid, he ought to just be thanking God that you've offered him a scholarship. And when he comes, look, I was over at Rhodes yesterday. I mean, it's the most beautiful inner city campus in America. And it's got less than 2,000 students. I was in that cafeteria doing that damn intermittent fasting with you and
you're struggling.
And Camp Lee and Jeff Cleanthes, the baseball coach. That guy was awesome. He was awesome. And he's eating that burger and those fries. And I was like, I can't. It smelled so good in that cafeteria. But look, you are given so many opportunities. You're given an opportunity to compete. And this thinking that, you're going to get $1 million, $6 million, whatever, just for showing up, nothing in the real business world works that way. It's why back in the late 80s, a popular group, REM, out of Athens, Georgia, got like an $80 million advance. That was the end of them. It ruined them. The $80 million is a lot of money, but it was a hell of a lot more money back in the late 80s. Okay? And this is what we're doing. I talked to some people in the music business. Now, this is just one person, but he said, you pick your big star nowadays. Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, Eric Church. They might be getting $250,000 or $500,000 in an advance. Right. And Jason Aldean might do 250 nights a year on the road. They've changed it, but they're hungry.
No question. And Rob, you raised a really good point. No one gets that type of money until they've proven their worth. It's one thing to have a great high school career, and we get you in here in a big NIL deal. And I just can't believe that $8 million number is true, Rob. But let's just say it is. It's such an unwise investment, and no disrespect to the student athlete. It's just, that's not the way we do business. We want to see your production before we reward you. Most coaches, most people probably know this, but I'll give you a great example, like even of my coaching career. I just started my 33rd year at Rhodes, right? So I coached 26 of those. I've been in administration ever since, right? Which we can debate whether or not that was a great decision. But, when I started out as coaching, my gosh, I was doing 2 or 3 different hats at a small school.
Of course.
We had the conversation yesterday. Cleanthes was talking, you were a baseball coach, about the differences. And, one of the things that you have to deal with if you get paid that money as a coach is the media. And you got to get up there and sometimes you got to take a bullet. And I think these coaches are masters at that. And for us at this level, what people don't understand, just because I'm a Division III coach, man, I'm not afraid to coach against anyone. It's not like they got some big boy pants they're wearing. We put on the same pants. We talk about the same things schematically. I go to their clinics. I steal some of their stuff. But, the difference is everything is always about players. It's not about coaches. That's why recruiting is so important. Every coach worth of salt has great players.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line.
You think about this. When I talked with Kingsley Egakwan, offensive lineman for Florida, and I don't know if I sent you, it's like a 1:38 cut. I was right there. We have these break-off sessions at media days, and I asked him about NIL. And I'm going to tell you something. His answer was really refreshing. In fact, I'm going to put it up here for people to hear because he nailed it. I'm going to let you hear this real quick, okay? Tell me what you think about this kid. He's an offensive lineman, University of Florida. And here we go. And whoops. Okay. I'm gonna have it up here. Here we go.
Fans are saying the game is ruined with NIL and all. And I mean, everybody wants to make money and all, but how many of your teammates, and you mentioned that about Rashada and all, would be there with or without it and all, and thinking about, you work your ass off, graduate, you come back, the connections, the relationships, what are those worth? But, you got to love the game of football more than anything.
Yeah, so actually kind of played a part in me not going anywhere, even though that thought never really crossed my mind.
Whoops. Okay. Have a little bit of connection issues here. Just stand by. But let's see. I think, and I'm going to finish that out here in just a second, but these student athletes, most of them are good kids.
Oh, that's
they're and I'm going to tell you what, I was over there at Rhodes yesterday, just talking to you and Jeff Cleanthes and Ann Camp Lee from rumbleboxinggym.com. And I just thought about what Jeff said. He'll cut down to, mid 40s on his roster. These kids love the game. And you think about the academic standards at Rhodes College. I mean, that's like I used to hear routinely out at Fort Benning when I covered that for Channel 3 in Columbus. The Ranger instructors would tell these guys going through Ranger school, they would say, y'all are triple crazy. And you know what they would say? You were crazy enough to join the Army, crazy enough to go through airborne school, and crazy enough to volunteer to go to Ranger school.
That's right.
But y'all are just the kind of people that this country has to have to win. Here we go.
Saying the game is ruined with NIL and all. And I mean, everybody wants to make money and all, but how many of your teammates, and you mentioned that about Rashada and all, would be there with or without it and all, and thinking about, you work your ass off, graduate, you come back, the connections, the relationships, what are those worth? But, you got to love the game of football more than anything.
Yeah, so actually kind of played a part in me not going anywhere, even though that thought never really crossed my mind to leave UF. Yeah. But if I left for X amount of money more or less, however it may have gone, what is that really doing for me? Like, I've already put in this work for 4 years at the University of Florida, and now if I leave, I'm leaving off on that note. But I think that's another thing I have a problem with, like, every day kind of saying is, like, I kind of question some of the guys, not necessarily the guys on my team, but I just question, like, are you really a Gator? Like, are you really here because you want to be a Gator? Are you here because they gave you this much money? And like me, I committed here, and NIL wasn't even a thing. The transfer portal wasn't even a thing when I got to college. So, I think NIL definitely, there's obviously some guys across the country who might be going to schools because of the amount of money they can get. But, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I personally don't think that's the right reason to go to a school, especially when everybody's paying NIL. Like, it's a common thing across all schools. So I think guys committing to schools because of money is kind of ridiculous, in my opinion. But
See, that's Kingsley Egaquin, offensive lineman for Florida, and he ain't the only one that feels that way. And I think I think people need to get off their asses and start going out and meet these student athletes. Find out what, and I was over there yesterday. I can't wait to get Chris Domino from 680 The Fan in Atlanta and his Bag of Souls, the great baseball interviews, on with Jeff Cleanthes, the Greek from New York. 20-plus years he's been at Rhodes. Warren E. Bud Ritchie from Alexandria, Louisiana, kept telling me about him. I got to meet him yesterday. And again, I got to get back over there soon. That food in the cafeteria at Rhodes smelled and looked really good. I mean, wow, Matt, you got an awesome job getting to mentor these young men and women. Because I got two of each, 2 boys, 2 girls, and listen, you got to train them to be competitive. And you're not their friend. And as a coach, you're a surrogate parent. We're going to come back. Hopefully John Hartwell is going to be able to join us. I know he was at last location known was at Wrigley Field last night for the Cubs and the White Sox, having an old style. But he is Daniel Simpson Day right now, whereabouts unknown. But Matt Dean is with us over at Rhodes College. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break on Thursday's edition of Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back with Matt Dean here on this Thursday edition of Sidelines. And, where we're going, and I'm getting a lot of comments from people, but just like, it's unbelievable. And here's a question, about Oregon. Look at Oregon, what they're doing. They're recruiting, from all over the country with that Nike money and the different costumes for every football game, the uniforms. They have fun with that. But that's a niche unique really to Oregon. I mean, Auburn people in the mid-'90s had conniption fits when they put a tint of orange on the outside because those traditional navy blue jerseys with white numerals. And it's like one of my friends who was an associate AD at Auburn one time told me about 10 years ago, he goes, the great thing about Auburn or Florida, Tennessee, is they've got a lot of tradition. But that's also why it's so hard to make any changes. My dad has proposed this idea of putting some really cool tiger stripes in the end zone at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn with an eagle, kind of a shade, inside the red zone. Because it's when you look, if you're in a bar, Matt, say Alex's Tavern, 1445 Jackson, drinking a cold Hams or whatever, watching a game and the sound is down and the jukebox is playing Curtis Lowe, and you look up and you see that orange and white checkerboard end zone, that's Tennessee. A lot of these end zones and stuff like that, everything's about unique branding. Your son's on that staff at Oregon. They got a direct flight from Eugene to Dallas-Fort Worth. He's recruiting kids from all over the country. What do they got? 12 kids from Texas already committed to Oregon?
At least. So, you raised a lot of good points because, we've done some things here even that have upset our alumni when we changed our logo a few years ago, right? And, You have to be careful. The thing about Oregon is with Phil Knight's presence and Nike's presence, this has been part of their recruitment. They have basically they'll basically send out a uniform schedule for the whole year of the combinations they wear. And you know what? In today's climate, it helps with recruiting. It really does. And this weekend they have their big. Tyler said there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 kids. They call it their Saturday Night Live event this weekend, and then obviously next weekend starts camp and things like that. But the great thing about college football is the traditions, Rob. So we got to be careful how much we do change, because we can piss off our customer base when we lose a game to the wrong team, let alone changing the color of a uniform or the end zone or red zone, right? So those are really difficult decisions that have to be thought out. And a lot of times you rely on your alumni board to help you if you're an administrator to talk through some of those things. Now, in the case of Rhodes, our former president, decided we were going to do some things and we didn't have much say, and we upset some people. Now, will we ever change back? I always like the model where you have an alternative jersey. Like, you don't have to change what you've got, but I like the alternative jerseys that you may wear once a year, right?
Yeah.
Or an alternative type of logo for that 1 week of the year. I mean, I'm really a fan of those type of things, because I do think, like, when you see sometimes different teams come out with a unique combination, it kind of fires up the fan base, for that particular game.
Yeah. Well, the last time Auburn wore orange jerseys, they've done it a few times. They did it in 1978. They tied Georgia 22-all. William Andrews' knee went down, the official said, right before the goal line, but Auburn tied them 22-all in 78. In 79, Auburn wore the orange jerseys at the Mississippi State game. I was in Auburn. Auburn won 14-3. 1980, Georgia freshman Herschel Walker came in, but it's been, and then they played Southern Miss that year. Maybe they wore them, but it's been a while since they wore them. And you keep hearing these rumors they may pull out the orange jerseys, but you don't mess with tradition. I like the retros. Yeah, the retro jerseys going back to the old days. That's cool, but Oregon's deal is unique because they've been doing it before anybody else was.
Right. And
they're parlaying Phil Knight's support, and God love them. You think Auburn doesn't tap into Yellowwood? And Tim Cook with Apple? I mean, that's okay. Oregon works. Your son, and I'm not just saying this to patronize you, that I want a hamburger with fries right now. I'm fasting again. But Matt, I'm telling you, I get a little bit lightheaded. But point is, that's Oregon's niche.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they do. And anyone I know that goes to Eugene, Oregon, goes, oh my God. A bucket list for any runner is to run on that track. Steve Prefontaine ran there. The Oregon Eugene track and field is the biggest deal in the country. Now the EdMurphyClassic.com in Memphis is trying to be number 2. I mean, take a long time to unseat Oregon, but where we're going, student athletes, you know what? And Tommy Tuberville says this, he's right. We're supposed to be teaching these student athletes the lessons of life. And so, flush this one down the toilet, people, when you tell me, well, the coaches are making all this money and they can leave. They're adults. You're talking about 18 to 22, 23. We're in today's world, 27, 28. I mean, with the virus, we're going to have somebody in their 30s playing soon. But you're talking 18 to 23-year-olds for the most part. You know what? If you've got a family business, would you be stupid enough to let your 19 or 20-year-old kid start making decisions when you've got 10,000 employees who depend on them? I mean, hell no, you wouldn't. And this NIL and this NCAA is so feckless and spineless. They played kick the can, Pontius Pilate, Mark Emmert. That's why we're going to take it back. I mean, because the free market will demand that it happens. And you're right. Frank Duffy said 3 friends of his in Louisiana that own businesses invested NIL money into LSU players. Last year, when LSU got to the bowl game, did you know that none of those guys were even on the team? And by the way, do you think those guys are investing again in NIL at LSU? No. That's pretty simple.
I even look at my coaching career, Rob. It's interesting. You talk about a career path. And, I remember when I was a GA and then I became a young assistant and then I worked my way up to kind of like the lead assistant. Then I became a head coach and I was a young head coach. And then I became more of a veteran head coach. I can tell you in year 26, there is no comparison to what I was in year 1 in terms of my efficiency, my aptitude, my decision-making, my relationship with the student athletes. That's like any of us in our careers, right? We get better. So to think that I should have been at year 1 compensated like I was at year 26 or year 33, that's not how it works. And I think what has happened now, I listened to that young man you played the quote. What a great teammate. You can win with guys like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want, as coaches, we want those type of attitudes, work ethics. It's like having an extra assistant coach in the locker room, right? So I think for the most part, there are a lot of examples of that going on in this country, what she played in that segment with that young man. Okay.
Yeah,
but I think the programs that have done the best are how the coaches have managed this NIL dynamic, right?
Yep.
And I guarantee you, and I don't know this for a fact, I don't know anything about this, but I bet Bryce Young took care of his offensive lineman. And I don't even know this. I have no idea. But I'm just telling you, there's got to be a way when one dude's getting $1 million and no one else is getting much.
Yeah.
That you show some types of respect and appreciation for those that are blocking for you on a day-to-day basis. I just know the culture too well, Rob. Offensive linemen are the key to any football engine. So you tell me a quarterback that's got a huge NIL deal, I'll tell you someone who's probably trying to take care of his offensive lineman, maybe not out of his own pocket, but going to other brands and sponsors in the area and saying, hey, look, take care of my guys, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's got to be going on, because if you're that type of leader and you're helping your O-lineman or whoever, your wide receivers, running backs, whoever, get some deals, it just makes the whole process better. Otherwise, you can have some resentment, and that doesn't work. And, you wonder sometimes, like, I'll throw this out to you. Spencer Sanders, I can't think of a better quarterback coach in college than Mike Gundy. Why did he leave to go to Ole Miss? Now, I know Lane's good. I know he's really good. Was it a deal? Was there a significant amount of change? Maybe so. But there's something there.
Yeah.
There's something there in the locker room that wasn't working for him at Okie State. And I'm just guessing it made sense for him to leave. Obviously, it's probably common sense. It's probably financial. But the better teams have got that chemistry part figured out about the whole NIL money distribution. That's what I'm saying.
I think you're exactly right. I read a great example of this about an officer in the Army. They were deployed and they had a 72-hour pass, and they shipped them a bunch of long necks, cold beers, and some good whiskey. And he said, you know what? I had a couple, but I gave it all to my men.
Right.
My command master sergeant,
that's right.
My XO, he goes, because if I sat up there in an air-conditioned, condo while they were out there, outside in 115-degree weather, and I'm living it up, eating steak and lobster, they'll salute me because they have to, but they'll have zero respect for me.
Correct.
And you're right about, again, I don't know about Bryce Young, but I know, and a lot of student athletes around the country. Bryce Young seems like a high character individual.
Yes.
The questions and the prodding and the poking that the Carolina Panthers probably did before they selected him number 1 in the draft would be painful for most people. But you always
gave
take
up a lot to go get him, Rob. They gave up a lot to go get him.
They did. And you think about this, again, the director of equipment operations at Auburn was telling me that, the number of players that just like to come by and they like to just, unwind, and not just guys that he's had at Auburn, but from other schools that played in the NFL, because they can go inside that protective area and be treated like they were before they were famous.
That's right.
And, contrary to what a lot of people believe, I think a lot of superstars, megastars, entertainers, athletes, whatever, I think a lot of them fall from grace and get into drugs and a lot of drinking and all, because the pressure to always perform and be perfect can break you. I mean, you think about Vince Young, former quarterback for the Titans, played at Texas. A friend of mine that lived in his neighborhood in Nashville told me that he had so many family members hitting him up for money 24/7, he had to cut them off. And then they cut him off. And all of a sudden his families just won't even speak to him. I don't think that helped. But that's what happens when you get all this money. Remember the Netflix documentary? It was Netflix or one of them on Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School, running back at Alabama, 09, 10, 11, number 4 pick in the draft by the Colts. He said one time he was looking at his paperwork. He had 11 Netflix accounts open. He didn't know who these people were.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of these low-life parasites out there want to live vicariously through other people's hard work. And NIL, when I hear all this tired old, well, they can help their families. Yeah, they can. But you know what? That family should be helping themselves. You don't put it on a 17, 18-year-old kid as your meal ticket. I never asked my kids for a damn thing except to respect me and to love, me, love their mother, go to mass, work hard, and love their country. I mean, I'm basic. I think that's where we're dropping the ball, and that's why when people that have the right values say, "Oh, I'm old school, I'm a dinosaur," no, you're not. Not at all. Man, I could tell the level of respect that you had. Every coach that came in that cafeteria yesterday loves you because they know that you've done what they've done. You've worked your tail off. And sometimes it doesn't work out. But the people that participated in that with you also learned a lot of lessons that, you ain't going to win every game in life. Wasn't easy out there tonight. Ain't going to be easy in life. But you hung in there and you fought. And you never quit. That's why we love sports. And NIL, gimme. The free market, I promise you, is going to create. Everybody's worried about NIL. They're worried about the portal. There's a lot more guys like Kingsley Egonquin at Florida than you think there are. They're not all a bunch of Deion Sanders primetime narcissists. That's just the way I see it.
You said it earlier in the show, Rob. There's just so many tremendous student athletes. A lot to unpack what you just said. The one thing that's always been true is there are a lot of student athletes that come from some really impoverished situations, right?
Sure.
Where they try to, that's their ticket out, and they try to help their families. What happens though is that circle sometimes grows, right? And it's really hard for an individual that's not had anything his or her whole life to shut off that faucet. And I think that's why there's, it's funny because, I have a son that's in the financial world now. That's a long way away from being Rob Browne, but I also have another son that talks with future NFL prospects every day. And I tell those guys, I said, guys, you got a business model there. Tyler, you and Rhino, we need a contract lawyer to get involved, but we need to start trying to help some of these young men and get them with someone they can trust and not looking to steal their money. Now get a fair commission on the deal. But I mean, we need more advocates for these young athletes to protect them from some of the things you just described. And then, the thing about the coaching thing, Rob, it's really interesting. When I've spent my whole year being a servant leader, being a coach, had opportunities to go to higher levels, stayed at Rhodes. As you can see, it's a great place to work. Also, my family was happy in the area. But we all have been in the weeds together. Kind of like your analogy with that general or colonel that invited his warriors to come up and have some of those cold beers. That's what we do. That's what we do. As leaders, I still go back. It resonates in my head every day. Fear no one, but respect everyone. That was what, if we were playing a top 5 team in the country, we respect the heck out of you. We're not scared to go compete. We're going to go. We're going to prepare. We're going to go in there with the believability that we can knock you down, right?
Yeah.
And preparation is everything in the athletic world. It's everything in your world, Rob. I mean, you don't just show up. You study the market. You study trends. You have a lot of things that you do. So, from that standpoint, like when accountability is important too. Every time we lost a game as a head coach, I said, ladies or men, this is on me. We're going to get better. We're going to learn from this. I didn't throw any one of them under the bus. Now, in my private headquarters with my staff, gosh, we missed that layup, or we didn't do this, or didn't get back. We had those conversations.
Sure.
How do we get better? But you got to make sure that kids are going to play hard for you, and they do that by knowing when they're not at their best, you're there to protect them.
Yeah,
and that's just the bottom line. And you're going to take the hit for them when it doesn't go their way.
Yeah. And I think the reason why a lot of these 17 and 18-year-olds are getting the platform that they are to spew all their whining, their bitching, moaning, and whining BMW culture is because we've emasculated so much of the American culture. We hear these stupid and ridiculous terms like toxic masculinity. And it's like Jimbo Fisher was asked last week about, you think there'll be any heated discussions with you and Bobby Petrino about who's calling the plays? And he goes, hold on a second. He goes, have you ever known of there not being heated discussions
there
on
better
a footballer? There better be. He goes, there better be. He goes, y'all, where are you coming up with these? I love that answer that he gave. But I think that we got to remember alpha male culture, not betas. Okay. Mr. Rogers was a nice guy, but I wouldn't want him coaching my football team. I wouldn't want him as a drill instructor at Paris Island. I want that alpha male. I want that son of a gun chewing on a cigar, having him a good scotch and water, that when he gets through, just kind of kicking back, listening to a little bit of Willie Nelson. Look, Pat Fitzgerald, I don't know what happened up there. They're going after PJ Fleck at Minnesota now. Look, hazing's abusing people is stupid, okay? But making them do a lot of hard physical work and be accountable, the mental pressure, stuff like knowing the name and the hometown and the major of every one of your teammates. The more you know about the people around you, the more you will care about the people around you.
No doubt.
Damn it, I learned that from Phil Thompson in college. And we had to know everything about every single person in Sigma Nu. You had another major. You had to know Phil Thompson had a dog named Mr. Happy from Huntsville, Alabama, watercress capital of the world. I mean, I still remember that stuff. He's a great lawyer, by the way, in Auburn. But I think about you Matt, you've got 2 boys now, and they're going to team up, and it's about trust, as you said.
Yeah.
And a lot of agents that I've talked to have said, yes, we try to do financial literacy. We try to, but we're just overwhelmed with the 20 or 30 people that come out of the woodwork. You've got to cut them off. That's the toughest thing that they do. But you know what, Matt? I love what is going on because we're seeing firsthand, and each year NIL, we hear about it at A&M, okay? But, when I get Olin Buchanan on here from TexAgs.com, he breaks it down, what's really happening. We're going to hear about the worst cases, aren't we? But there's a lot of great stories out there. And look, if you come from abject, absolute poverty, hell, that's the American dream, man. And you work hard. But if you get $600,000 when you're 18 and you got 30 people tugging at you saying they'll pay you back, you've gone backwards in life. That's how I see it.
It's a bigger issue. We all just think about, that kid got the money, right? But what you just described is the more money, sometimes the more problems, the more handouts, right? And I think that, it's funny, the lottery, every time it gets like in the hundreds of millions, close to $1 billion.
Yes.
I sit there sometimes and I daydream about, who I'd give some help to and, how I would end my tenure at Rhodes College, all that stuff. And it's fun to think about that. But there's a part of me that realizes, Matt, if that ever happens, you better surround yourself with a few really good, smart people, because you're going to get, and you want to kind of go in the witness protection program a little bit too, because it's not easy, is it, Rob? I mean,
no.
I'm sure you have some clients that have incredible net worth, and they rely on you for really crucial decisions on how to protect their investment and their future and their families, and I think that's the thing, like, this deal, when you get some money, the hardest thing, if you haven't had money your whole life, the hardest thing to listen to is someone says, okay, now put this all away. Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's what you're telling me to do.
Yeah.
And they need to go out and they need to get a car. They need to get some clothing, and their friends need, and it's Rob, it's almost like, I can't imagine the book stories out there waiting to happen of stuff that just, you mentioned Trent Richardson. There's got to be hundreds of cases of this, Rob.
There are. And I tell you, my estate planning attorney that I worked with for 20 years, he died 9 years ago. Smartest guy I've ever known. He could read people like nobody else. And, he was divorced and very successful. And he'd meet somebody in a bar, and girl, and he didn't want them to know, what he'd worked for and had earned. They'd say, what do you do? He'd go, I'm a rodeo clown. That's what he used to tell them. Nothing against rodeo clowns, but I mean, it's kind of like the reaction was hilarious, because see, that's the thing. You don't know what's in their heart. And I think about Bill Courtney, had him on the show one time. I'd love to get him back on, who did the documentary Undefeated about Manassas in North Memphis.
Yeah.
Bill's successful guy, grew up really, he said, I wish I'd had my dad around, but his mother was a great mom. I was a Sigma Nu at Ole Miss at that lumber yard in North Memphis, spent 7 years at Manassas. He said he talked to Omar, one of the guys in the movie. And he said, Omar, how much you think your grandmama's house is worth? He said, $5,000. He goes, oh, hell. He goes, how much you think my house is worth out in Germantown? Very nice house. He said, $10,000.
Wow.
See, it's financial literacy.
Yeah.
And when we sit down with families and plan and talk about this stuff, I always tell them, if you got 5 million, 5 billion, and you got 4 or 5 kids, first off, make them work. I'm talking, scrubbing floors, cleaning bathrooms, work bottoms up. Number 2, don't talk about your money. And that's where NIL is going to fail, because when you're bench pressing your wallet in public, you're going to alienate a lot of people around you. Because you know what the saddest thing is? A lot of really, really, really wealthy people they got to wonder at the end of the night, are the people that are my friends really my friends? Are they just friends with my money and my bank account?
Correct.
That's what's happening with NIL. Gene Chizik said it right now. There's in the locker room, we're together. Some guys are bigger, stronger, faster. We get that. But now some guys getting $1 million of NIL. The guy doing the blocking and all for him is getting, free pancakes every month, and he's just getting fat.
He's got the Zaxby's deal, right? Chicken strip dinner.
Yeah. Something like that.
That's right.
But you know what? I believe in hard work. I believe in America. We'll figure it out. You know why? Because we always do. Remember that great line in Song of the South by Alabama? It said, pestilence, famine, depression, wipeout, drought is ruining America. We talked with farmer Alec Gillis. Well, we're Americans. We've been through hard times before. We'll get through them. We're Americans. That's what we are. I believe in American exceptionalism. I believe in Matt Dean, what you're doing. I love it. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Any doubt about we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Again, go to Fort Benning. Go to, any military post on Labor Day, 4th of July. You'll see the best people in America. We will be back tomorrow. Got a great show. We don't know where John Hartwell is. Maybe Harry Carey's ghost got him. I don't know. But we'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day. We are out of here.